On January 10th, with the start of Episode 8, Haven was removed from the competitive map pool for the first time since Valorant's release. Haven was one of the game's first original maps when the closed beta was released in 2020, along with Split and Bind. It was actually the first Valorant map ever shown to the public, as it was featured during teasers of Valorant's development when it was still called Project A. Haven was likely the very first map that Riot ever created for Valorant, and it's still basically the same as it was when it was first released. Since then, Valorant's community has grown tremendously, and it's become one of the largest competitive shooters in the world. We've gone through so many different metas in these last 4 years, but Haven has been a part of every single one. So to honor the end of an era, we're going to go back in time and dissect every single Haven meta since Valorant's release. We'll be able to see how Haven's meta has evolved as new ways to play Valorant were discovered. This means we'll be breaking down everything from util usage to agent comps, as well as macro about what type of map control teams prioritized back then. We're going on a journey back in time to see how competitive Valorant has changed over the years. And what better way to do it than to look at the evolution of a meta on the oldest map in the game. Stay tuned, because at the end of the video, I'll be going over my favorite forgotten Haven strats and ideas, and how I think they could be relevant in 2024. Thanks to Immortal Roadmap for sponsoring this video. If your rank is below Radiant, you play at least 2 to 3 comp games a day, and you've been struggling to rank up, our sponsor has a crazy offer for you. The Immortal Roadmap program will teach and help you implement everything you need to hit Immortal Plus in 8 weeks. They're so confident in their coaching that they are the only coaching program that offers a 5-division rank up in 8 weeks guarantee or your money back. They've helped hundreds of students hit Immortal and Radiant, and their coaching staff consists of Konpeki and over a dozen Radiant coaches with VCT experience, such as Comet, who's an analyst on Ascend the year they won champs in 2021, Screwface, who's the 6th man on EG when they won champions in 2023, and Gangsta, who played on Disguised, Immortals, and Knights. If that offer sounds good to you, sign up fast, as only 16 spots remain for Season 17. Okay, let's get back to the video. When we look back in time, there were so many different things that teams used to do, which seem very questionable now. But simultaneously, a lot of interesting ideas from teams way ahead of their time that are still relevant today. Some of the very first competitive games on Haven revealed that teams already had a decent understanding of how Haven would and should be played. The first major North American Valorant tournament was the T1 Invitational, which was held during the closed beta of the game. A lot of famous Counter-Strike players participated in this tournament, as well as many teams who would eventually become famous in the Valorant scene. This tournament ended up in a final between Team Brax and Gen G, with a tiebreaker match on Haven. Team Brax played a comp with no controllers, while Gen G played a comp with no duelist. It's easy to understand why CS players would prioritize utility, which helps them take peeks and gather info, but found low value in agents who could only throw smokes. In the first round of the game, we immediately see a lot of action in A main. Teams in the beta already understood that A main is a critical part of controlling Haven. This Cypher Cage, which allows attackers to cross into short A, was already being used at this point and became a signature part of the first Haven metas. When we look to the EMEA region for their first big tournament during the closed beta, we also see this cage being used to deny information. On top of that, we saw EU teams use this top C smoke very often, which denied information from defenders in C long. This allowed attackers to sneak up while defenders had no idea if attackers were actually in A short or C long. The combination of the top C smoke and A main cage became the very first Haven meta, and many defensive strategies were aimed at breaking apart these setups. This clip, for example, shows Artis getting boosted on top of the Sage wall, so he can clearly see over the top C smoke. We also started seeing Breach and Sova utility thrown into A main by defenders in order to counter the A main control from the Cypher Cage. Interestingly enough, the first time that this short cross and A main control was shown was before the beta was even released for the game. During Valorant's first full gameplay teaser, which showed a full round of gameplay, we can see a Viper wall set up by attackers to cross into A short and a defensive Sova dart used to counter it. It's funny how the Valorant alpha testers seem to come to similar conclusions as pro players months later. Valorant was officially released on June 2nd, 2020, with a couple balance changes. The most notable changes were made to nerf Cypher and buff Jett, who could now dash through trips to break them. These changes were huge, as they gave rise to a broken agent and immediately made executes even easier to pull off, which further encouraged the development of the A or C meta. First Strike was announced as the first Riot-organized tournament series and featured regional competitions across the globe. During the North American First Strike finals, almost every single round revolved around bouncing pressure between A main and C long. with the top C smoke and A main Cypher utility. Attackers would eventually pick a timing and hit the site hard, since they did not need to worry about trips with the jet dash. At this time, most A executes would revolve around control of short A and rushing up from there, since the Cypher cages and jet smokes would conceal the cross to short from defenders in long. Defenders would usually use a bottom C smoke to counter the top C smoke, and would look for opportunities to fight and disrupt A main control on the other side of the map. TSM was known for their aggressive triple duelist comp, and opted to fight for A main control in many defensive rounds to gain valuable information. In one attack round, Hayes drops this smoke near Brick. TSM lost this map pretty badly, so we never saw this smoke utilized in any interesting ways, but this smoke is something we'll come back to later on. Over in Europe, teams preferred comps with more utility, but still mainly played around the same map control concepts to bounce pressure between A main and C long. Heretics were using the A main smoke paired with the Sova Dart to take control on defense. In response, Summon FC, who eventually became Fnatic, would try new interesting ideas like we see in this round, where they use the drone to late clear A main. They're actually attempting to bait a push from Heretics right when their Sova drone clears A main, but Heretics decides to rotate through spawn instead. However, this still gives you a good idea of how effective this type of pressure was at the time, and how scared defensive teams were of forced A executes. The Asian Valorant scene also played Haven in a similar way. Watch how Vision Strikers play this round against F4Q, showcasing everything we just talked about. Both Omens trade top and bottom C smokes, but it was very rare at this point for either player to push past either smoke. Vision Strikers were the first dominant team to show Breach's value on this map, and popularized the Silver Breach combo used to push defenders out of long. This pulls rotators to commit towards A, and Vision Strikers use this timing to run all 5 players back to C long to execute. Despite each team using slightly different comps to execute their strats, it's crazy how all 3 regions independently came to similar conclusions about Haven's meta. All 3 regions were innovating new ways to play with the control between A main and C long, but still no one really effectively used the middle of the map. Even at Masters Reykjavik in 2021, Sentinels were mainly working off the control between A and C. We would occasionally see attempted solo lurks through B, as well as a couple more C-split executes using the control of Garage, rather than just having all 5 players go up long. Fnatic on defense even went as far as Killjoy ulting A main early in the round to keep Sentinels out of it. This play is hilarious to watch in hindsight, because Killjoy ult is way too valuable to use like this today. But again, it just goes to show how much emphasis there was on A main control back then. It wasn't until Masters Berlin where Envy and Gambit both used mid-control numerous times as a main tool for winning rounds on Haven. In this round, Envy puts a unique spin on the A main and C long control, but incorporate mid control into the mix as well. Towards A, Envy have their Jet smoke off the A long cross and lurk into long. Towards C, defenders in this tournament were starting to push down C long more often so they could get past the top C smoke and get better info. Envy go for a instant flash peek to punish the push and catch Reyna. Simultaneously, Sova is droning out mid-window, and all these moving parts opens up a timing for Killjoy to sneak into Garage. Now they have a great timing to go back to A, but also to punish the rotators with their lurk from Garage. In this next clip, they run a similar 2-2-1 setup, where Skye goes for the flash peek into C long again to punish another push. Take note how Skye flashes on a slightly later timing, so Jet is no longer in a safe position. Sova absorbs the push from A, and while that's happening, Killjoy and Jet are able to take a lot of free space on B. Here's one more example where Envy starts by taking A main control, but only did so to set up a B execute. By taking control of short, Killjoy can drop the lockdown while the rest of the team leaves A main to work close to B. Despite the Brim ult killing the Killjoy ult, Envy still created a great timing for themselves and execute B successfully off of it. We're seeing Envy build on top of the meta and punish Gambit for expecting things to work in the previous meta. Gambit were punished in so many rounds for pushing down long C, but normally the top C smoke would be there and a passive lurker would be hanging around, making the push well worth it. But when Gambit swaps to attack this game, they also immediately call a B execute, and ironically, that catches Envy off guard as well. Envy are set up in a very committed way to fight for A long and C long. But that means no one will be able to rotate in time to help with the B execute, and Gambit are able to flood the site without much resistance. Both teams on this map really showed that the Haven meta was evolving and evolving fast. The best teams in the world could use the middle of the map as a real win condition and not just a mix-up thrown in once every couple rounds. But did this mean the end of the A main and C long meta? Well, not quite. It's true that by Champions in 2021, most C hits were not a full rush through long and often started including splitting from garage. This also meant that the top C smoke became less and less valuable for attackers to throw. If your ultimate goal is to split C, smoking off your own top C just blocks off crossfires you have between long and garage. We saw hard A rushes less and less throughout this period, as teams figured out how to prevent short from being taken so easily. We continued to see strats which involved actually planting the bomb on B as a main strategy, but this didn't mean that the A main and C long default was gone and would come back in many different forms in the future. This is about when I start having access to data, and we can plot every single death that occurred during Champions in 2021 to see where teams were playing around. Thanks again to augment.gg for providing me this data. You can check them out in the description below. When I turn all these points into a heat map, we can see that areas around A and C were still highly contested, and by far the most popular way to play Haven in 2021. Take note of how short A is a highly contested area in 2021, but we'll see how and why things change in the future. We can also plot the number of times the spike was planted on each site. In 2021, the spike was planted 61 times on C, 17 times on B, and 78 times on A. Proportionally, that means the bomb was planted 39.1% of the time on C, 10.9% of the time on B, and 50% of the time on A, clearly showing the vast majority of bomb plants going towards A and C. We'll come back to this and take a look at how these graphs evolve by Champions in 2022 and in 2023. Remember this attacker side smoke that I talked about hazed throwing back at first strike? Fnatic were one of the first teams to push for this smoke to be a new A main default smoke. This smoke has certain advantages. Not only does the smoke conceal the cross to short, but it also allows attackers to threaten control of long. The old smoke meant that defenders had more space in long even though they may lose control of short, but pushing through this brick smoke was now a way bigger risk for defenders. There are some optimizations that Fnatic still had to make before the smoke became very strong, like making sure to shoot this dart every single round for example, but this is when teams started to really experiment with this smoke. Unfortunately, the top 4 teams at Champs in 2021 did not play Haven, so it wasn't until Masters Reykjavik in 2022 where we saw huge changes to the Haven meta because of one agent in particular, Chamber. Chamber was released near the end of 2021, and teams very quickly realized how strong he could be. Masters Reykjavik was the first international tournament of the year, and teams that could utilize Chamber's strengths were very clearly the frontrunners of this tournament. Most teams that didn't catch on fast enough were eliminated early on. A lot of people will point to how stupid Chamber's teleport was, but other agents can achieve somewhat similar effects. The main reason he was broken was not one individual ability, but the combination of his abilities which made him the ultimate agent on defense. Most defensive setups require one place to absorb pressure and another side fighting for info and map control. Chamber not only excelled at both these things, but could pull off faster rotates than everyone else because of his TP. This means that a good Chamber on defense could completely take over a game, and that's exactly what happened multiple times with the top Chamber players in the world. What this looked like on Haven meant setups like this, where one player, Ye, could completely solo 80% of the map. All 4 Optic players are stacked on A, while Chamber controls the rest of the entire map. Zeta has full control of A main, and while this used to mean a lot on Haven, in the Chamber meta, this meant very little. Here's another round where Ye takes full control of A main, gets the pick and important info, then stops the push all by himself, ending with a TP out to safety. And even though Ye was the best player in this tournament, other teams were still pulling this off just as effectively. Against Loud, Team Liquid used their Chamber to set up 2 trips in mid, and then ran him all the way to A main in time to take multiple fights with his TP. The entire map was again controlled by Chamber alone. Loud placed second in this tournament, but lost 13-2 to Team Liquid on this map. Funnily enough, this was the only map in their series that Team Liquid played Chamber, and Haven was the only map they ended up winning. The current attacker side Haven meta was not ready for an agent like Chamber. As we can see in most of these rounds, these trips went completely untouched. Even though the Chamber meta seemed very boring, it really forced teams to innovate, as we'll see in the next couple tournaments. One additional thing to note is how KO was used by Optic this tournament, showing that he was a very strong option for Haven comps. Because KO knife does not require line of sight to work like Sova Dart, there are so many lineups that make the knife unbreakable. This means that teams on attack have to be aware of an early knife, and this affects a lot of attempts for early control. In this round between Optic and Zeta, Optic placed 2 trips in Garage, stacked 3 near B, and used the KO knife in C long. This makes it possible to defend every single site from an immediate push. Info will be gained in both A and C early enough for all 3 rotators on B to make it to the fight. This is exactly what happens when Zeta rush A in this round. KO utility was used in A lobby to take immediate control on defense. Along with existing methods to use Astra and Breach utility, A main became harder and harder for attackers to control as soon as the round started. One counter option that started to emerge was picking Omen and using him to instantly teleport across this dangerous angle, and we'll start to see this become standard protocol from this point on. Moving on to Masters Copenhagen, Chamber was now being picked in almost every single match. Teams actually had a huge variety of comps on Haven, as teams debated between Raze, Jet, or Neon as main duelists, Astra or Omen on controller, and Sky, Breach, or Fade as main initiator. Every team was trying out their own theories to deal with Chamber. The most interesting innovation came from an up-and-coming team named Paper Rex, who managed to make it all the way to the grand final. They brought back the Sage pick to help deal with 2 main attacker side issues. Firstly, it was getting harder and harder for attackers to take A main early in the round. Sage could instantly slow short and have the rest of the team set up for a strong peek into long with Astra utility. On top of that, Paper Rex had a Sage wall boost late into the round to help retake control of A long. Secondly, Chamber's map control on defense was allowing teams to position well for fast rotates, as we saw during Masters Reykjavik. This often meant that defenders could flood out onto site right as attackers got there. Sage's kit is perfect for countering a fast retake or site flood scenario, because as soon as she has some control, her utility can completely deny rotators from helping. Now, even with Chamber in your comp, you still had to commit harder to sites, since Sage would prevent you from rotating in if you were too late. PaperX dominated 2 of the best teams in this tournament, Optic and FPX, on Haven with this strat. And even though this innovation died with this tournament, I think it was an awesome early adjustment to Chamber. By Champions 2022, we were seeing the Haven meta come full circle and mind games were in full effect. We already saw that teams on attack would no longer contest A main early into the round and opted to retake it later because defender utility was too hard to deal with. On the other hand, defenders were getting punished for putting too much into A main when attackers could pull off explosive B rushes or C splits. So we're now seeing funny situations like this round between DRX and Optic. DRX starts this round with a Brick Smoke and a fake Omen TP, while Optic throws some Fade utility. But nobody from either team actually takes control of A main, and it's left completely empty until later into the round. Here's another round where we see the Brick Smoke that I talked about back in 2021 becoming very relevant. DRX are able to use it to walk all the way up A main, and this is surprising to see in 2022, since this is exactly how teams were being punished back in 2020, and why A main became so contested in the first place. DRX are able to pull off a surprise execute to win their eco round. The A main default setup with the Brick Smoke confuses Optic again in a future round. Optic keeps 2 players on A thinking that DRX are sneaking up A main again, but in reality, DRX have already rotated out and are preparing for a B execute. Optic is caught off guard with a B hit and DRX wins another round off of their A main control, so Optic calls a timeout to try and address this issue. Out of the timeout, they call a 3-man aggressive A push to gather info and prevent what just happened. But now that DRX have pulled full attention to A, they run the 5-man C long push to bring the Haven meta around full circle. DRX's insane utility usage with their double initiators made the full C-long rush very scary again. We're really seeing the same idea of bouncing control between A main and C-long, but now with new defaults like the Brick Smoke and Omen TP, as well as even more explosive C-long executes with double initiator comps. The Brick Smoke default also completely changed how A is taken by attackers because it helped teams gain more long control. During this game in the grand final between Optic and Loud, we see the same protocols that we did in the last clip, where the Brick Smoke is thrown by attackers who walk up A main, while defenders throw some utility to bluff aggression, but don't actually fight for A main. Take note how Optic sends 4 players into long and only 1 player into short. If you remember from a while ago, A executes used to rely a lot on players going up short A, but now more and more attackers are sent long for executes instead. We'll see this more and more often from now on, and I'll explain why later on in the video. The Haven meta was reaching maturity, and every type of strategy that we've seen since 2020 is now fair game in 2022. When we plot all the deaths during champs in 2022 and turn that into a heat map, we can see that the map is being used more evenly than it was in 2021. We're seeing more action in the middle of the map, and the hotspots are not as strong towards A or C. This is more evident when we look at how much the spike was planted on B compared to 2021. In 2022, the spike was planted 47 times out of a total 228 times on B, meaning it was being planted on B 20.6% of the time, which is almost 10% more than 2021. Loud showed us how to use all the older strats we've gone over in a single round that completely broke apart Optic's defense. They start by taking garage control, breaking the Killjoy turret, and setting up Raze to sit there, while the other players hold A and C pushes, similar to what we saw Envy do in 2021. This pulled attention towards the middle of the map as you can see Phoenix starts to rotate out of A. Then, Loud uses this opportunity to take back control of A late into the round by throwing the brick smoke that we saw Fnatic using in 2021. They creep up behind it and work out onto A while Optic has fallen back to play retake. Now that Loud has a lot of pressure on A, they use this timing to take C, with the two players they had in C long and Raze, who was sitting in garage the entire time. Loud were the best team in the world this year, and they really showed it by playing some of the best Haven attack rounds, which combined all the metas we've seen so far. Finally, we get to 2023, the first year of the VCT Franchise Leagues. This year featured 3 international events, which started with a kickoff tournament called Lock-In. The biggest update to the Haven meta since champs was that teams were bringing back Sova as a main initiator after he had been replaced with other initiators in 2022. One possible reason for this is Sova's special advantage, where he can break certain utility like Cypher Trips or Killjoy Mollies with his Shock Dart. We haven't really seen Sentinel utility be targeted, which maintained a lot of info for defenders, but now it started becoming a main priority for teams. Chamber was gone, Sova was back, and teams started heavily prioritizing A main control again due to the new smoke innovations. But compared to 2020, teams on attack now understood that long control was significantly more important than short. There are just so many different off angles in short that are hard for attackers to clear, especially when re-clearing a lobby. During lock-in, Fnatic started throwing this new smoke, which just completely blocks off the short crossfire so they can focus on long. Only when they have full control of long would Fnatic come back to take control of short. We can even see this effect when we look at the heat maps again, where in 2021, short A was a highly contested area. There isn't nearly as much action there in 2022, and it's shifted to the angles that are coming up from long instead, precisely because of the shift in A main priorities. The general map control theory has stayed the same, but the details and how A main is controlled is distinctly different from early competitive Valorant. But the rest still holds true, as once you have defenders worrying about A main, you can immediately find openings to hit the other side of the map, and Fnatic show us this just like teams have been doing since Haven's release. Fnatic have always been the front runners in pushing forward the Haven meta, as they've kept it in their map pool from when they were still Summon FC. But they didn't even get a chance to play a single map of Haven during their dominating Masters Tokyo run, so we'll have to look to other top teams to see if anything significant had changed. Against Team Liquid, EG are playing the exact same comp that Fnatic popularized. On defense, they took A main priority to the next level by calling a 4-man push. We see the brick smoke come out from Team Liquid, but Jett plays to push past it with utility to break up the setup. We'll start to see this played more often by Jett players to break apart the new brick smoke default. The timings and fights are just slightly off for EG, and everything breaks apart, but we'll see exactly why I was saying this part of short A is now considered bad for attackers to prioritize. Calm gets an instant 4K to save the round with 16 HP remaining. And although I don't want to take anything away from his crazy clip, just look how claustrophobic this angle is for attackers to funnel through, while defenders can be on so many different angles. Calm hits some nice shots, but mainly spams and pre-fires into one angle, earning him the rest of the kills from a pretty safe position. I guarantee you that if Team Liquid ran up long instead, even pushing through their own Omen smoke, they would have won this round. One additional strat that became more popular in 2023 was the idea to take A by using B as a proxy. In this round, Team Liquid have Omen lurk A while the rest of the team works close to B. Then they rip the breach ult aim towards A link to ultimately push through to A. We'll see this type of strat start to be mixed in with standard B execs as a mix-up. Moving on to champions in 2023, Haven was not played by EG or Paper Rex in the Grand or Losers Final. but Fnatic still kept it in their pool, and we can take a look at their losers semifinal match against Loud. Fnatic stick to their tried and true comp, while Loud have now brought the Harbor Viper comp to Haven, which was originally popular on other maps like Pearl. Here is a sequence of rounds from Fnatic on attack, and Boaster really shows that he has played this map since the beginning of Valorant. They start their gun round with the Brick Smoke. Fnatic just place a Killjoy turret to watch short while all 5 players walk up long. But Loud have seen the smoke enough times to know what it means and stack up to contest it. The Sova drone clears them out and Loud's trap was unsuccessful. In the next round, Fnatic runs the same strat, but Aspas goes for an instant peek through the smoke to contest A main. Fnatic were punished by this peek, so they adjust their strat in a future round to use the original cross smoke in A main and utility into long to threaten a peek. This denied info from Loud and kept 2 players on A, while Fnatic were able to rotate back to C for a split. In the next round, they used the same utility paired with an Astra Suck to again push Loud out of contesting long. Then Fnatic drops the short smoke, which denies the annoying angle from defenders pushing into short. Fnatic's control of A with another variation made Loud guess wrong again, as Fnatic rotate back to C for another split, and Loud are completely out of position to contest it. In the next round, Fnatic swap back to the Brick Smoke, but Loud are done with this, and get Aspas to push up short to take the God angle with an op. The Killjoy turret is mistakenly placed too late and just barely gets timinged, so Aspas is able to catch Alpha re-clearing short after his team already has control of long. But even though Fnatic have lost complete control of short, they still get the bomb down on site by coming through long. This sequence of rounds showed us every major development we've seen in A main since 2020, and how modern day teams use that control as a win condition. Let's take a final look at the depth heat map for 2023 and see where we're at today. Now we're again seeing hotspots more spread throughout the map and B getting slightly more attention than champs in 2022. In 2023, the spike was being planted on B 22.4% of the time. Teams were definitely working on to B more and more often, especially with specific ult combinations, but Haven's map theory has always remained a battle of power between A main and C. We're still seeing new innovations to play around these same concepts that were originally created in 2020. Like this Omen TP into the right side of long. TenZ uses this to punish Paper X in this offseason tournament. Even though Haven has been around for such a long time, I still think there are a lot of ideas that have been unexplored. Loud's success with the Viper Harbor comp, for example, showed a lot of promising new ways in which information could be denied from defenders, but also how attackers could have their site chopped up and forced into awkward post-plant situations. I think this comp could make a strong reappearance in 2024, as it was technically the strongest Haven comp in 2023, being a big reason that Loud took down Fnatic. Here's a strat from Gen G in 2020, who took control of Garage, went into the window, and used Sage Wall to block off rotators from B. I think C-Link is quite underrated, and I see potential today in C-splits executed from Garage window into spawn. Also, I never circled back on the C-Long smoke that was so common in early Valorant, but used much less later on. Fnatic and Loud used this smoke a couple times throughout their match, but we never saw it do anything interesting for them. Teams improved this smoke and started smoking off the jump peak spot instead, like we see C9 do in this match against Lev. This would allow attackers to creep up and punish bad peaks, but not have to deal with pushing through their own smoke. I think this same concept could be taken to A, where attackers can smoke off the jump peak from default to threaten a walkout from long. This would help prevent a lot of traps which are set up by defenders from jump spotting default. For defenders on A, they often try to fight for long immediately, and then when they lose control of it, fall all the way back to prepare for a fight on site. This is because re-clearing long too quickly means someone could just be playing anti-flash from these deep angles, and you get punished for it easily by top players. This spot becomes a key transition point for attackers because players deep and long will start to move up since they are no longer providing value by being back in lobby. These angles are always really awkward for attackers to deal with, so I think there's potential for defenders to contest here and then pair utility on contact. Finally, we've historically seen a lot of teams play A or C retakes with Killjoy or Breach ult, but I think there's a lot of potential with a B retake ult from Killjoy or Breach from short A. Attackers like to play post plant from these safe spots deep in mid, and both those spots get cleared by those ults. I'm excited to see how Haven will change after it's added back to the map pool, and how those changes will affect Haven's future metas. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribe to my channel. I obviously had to skip over and generalize a lot of stuff in this video, so comment down below if there's anything you guys remember from any old Haven metas that I wasn't able to cover, and let me know what you'd be interested in seeing me cover next. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you again next time.